Are you getting dumber? And before you get all defensive, hear me out. Have you forgotten words mid sentence lately? Opened your phone to check one thing, ended up on 17 different apps later, not knowing what you were looking for in the first place? Told yourself one more reel, one more TikTok, only to fall into a trance of 3 hours later, not knowing where the hell the time went, or trying to write an email and having to use ChatGPT to make it more professional because somehow you've forgotten how to write? Because if you relate to any of these things, same. There's a problem. We all feel like we're getting duller, like our creativity is dulled, and our life has become more black and white than it once was, or so it seems. In a world of infinite information, infinite content, infinite distraction, we can know anything in a matter of seconds. We can know anything in seconds and yet understand nothing, even when we try really, really hard. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Ish Matters, where we have conversations about things you were low key spiraling about at 2 a.m. I actually asked you guys what you wanted to hear for this episode on my Instagram, and a lot of you said COVID. Did it make us dumber? And I thought that was a really interesting question. I mean, because a lot of people have a lot of conspiracy theories about COVID and the vaccine and the pandemic in general. And trust me, I love conspiracy theories more than the next person. But I like to break it down with science and debunk myths, just so we're all on the same evidence based page, if you will. So today we are going to be talking about all the ways in which we are getting dumber or have gotten dumber, if we have, and the role COVID played. We'll talk about the paradox of plenty, the age of information overload, and so much more. Because this is such a long conversation, it's going to be two parts. This part, we're going to be focusing more on COVID and attention. Second part is going to be more focused on memory and what we can do to fix our brains and take our attention back from them. Who are they, you may ask? Anyways, try to stay tuned for this episode. Prove yourself wrong in thinking that you are devolving into a caveman or cavewoman. And try to watch to the end of this episode because we are answering the question on the minds of millions of people: what happened to my brain? And the best place to start here is COVID. When we talk about COVID, we're talking about the pandemic, not just as a health crisis, but as a psychological earthquake that jolted the attention spans of everybody in this world. And if you felt dumber since 2022, I know I have, we're not crazy. COVID did scramble our collective brains, both biologically and culturally. But let's start with the biology. COVID brain fog is real. We finally have enough evidence from multiple studies to show that even after recovery, COVID did impact people's attention, memory, and executive function. Now, scientists believe that this may be due to blood vessel damage or inflammation in or around the brain or in the body, or just direct viral effects on the brain. In fact, one 2022 study found that people who had COVID had measurable shrinkage in brain areas responsible for memory and attention. That's not just you forgetting where you put your keys, that's structural changes in the brain. And it's not just people with severe cases. Even mild infections have left people with fatigue, word finding issues, and issues with memory and executive function. So, pretty much all of the above, just a little bit milder. And so, back to my initial point in my hook, if you forget words mid sentence lately and you never experience that issue, that actually might be the impact of COVID. It's like trying to think clearly when someone's holding a pillow over your prefrontal cortex. Everything feels muffled and dulled somehow. And that's long COVID for millions and millions of people. And then there is the cultural brain fog. Even if you didn't really get sick during the pandemic, it still did rewire your attention in some capacity, in some way. Think about it. Life became mediated through screens. You attended school, work, funerals, birthday parties, graduation parties through a screen. You sat at your laptop day in, day out, realizing that your sourdough starter isn't really going to fix your problems. Don't come at me. I mean, I know the whole bread thing did give people some kind of relief, and we have a lot of new cool bread recipes, but still, the monotony had a neurological cost. It always does. And pretty much what happened during this pandemic is that our cognitive collapse expedited. It was already happening, which we'll get into, but it expedited itself, right? And memories started blurring into one another, days melted into one another, time didn't really mean anything anymore because we didn't have novelty. not the novelty of new content, real life novelty. Commutes, new places, new faces, new weather, new feelings. Our brain literally requires that to maintain its sharpness. And without it, we're cognitively dulled. And this is really called atrophy when we start losing some of our abilities, some of our neural pathways, because we're not using them. And so, yes, monotony has a neurological cost, and that is atrophy. When we don't use it, we lose it. And just like that, the lack of stimulation, the lack of novelty, the lack of new environments and social cues caused our memory encoding to weaken and our cognitive sharpness to dull. And you didn't need a cherry on top, but here's one anyway: stress. So, the pandemic was a source of incredible stress for a lot of people for many, many different reasons. And that chronic elevated stress level, that cortisol, when it floods your system, actually erodes your hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for memory, which is yet another reason that our memory encoding weakened. The pandemic didn't really just pause society, it weakened our collective mental muscle, if you will. And we emerged from the pandemic almost like if you just woke up and suddenly the curtains opened and you're blinking and you can't really see and you're trying to figure out what's wrong. We emerged foggier, more distracted, more dependent on our devices, and just a little bit duller. And that's the sad reality. But the pandemic is not the sole factor involved in this discussion. The pandemic kind of just hit the gas pedal on what was already happening to us, which is that we are being pulled into this distraction, not by accident, but by design. Okay, I know a lot of you are waiting for me to talk about the vaccine, and unfortunately, there isn't really much out there about the vaccine in your brain. There are a lot of conspiracy theories, but what we do know about the vaccine is that it was rolled out way too quickly. I mean, like the research and development for a vaccine usually takes 10 to 20 years, sometimes even more. And the US government rolled out Operation Warp Speed, which was this operation to expedite the process. And we expedited it a lot. But in that expedition, we didn't really understand the long term side effects or consequences of this vaccine. So there's still time for us to study what it did to us. One thing that is proven, for example, is that it has had negative implications on our physical health for women, reproductive health. There's a lot of research about that. But there's more to come. So we won't be talking about the vaccine. Okay. But COVID didn't do anything that wasn't already happening. And here's one way we can really begin to understand this. For most of the 20th century, humans were on the upswing. This was something called the Flynn effect. Decade after decade, generations were outperforming the last in cognitive abilities and IQ scores, etc. And this was true until recently, until about 20 years ago, when we started to see that Flynn effect, that curve stall, plateau, or even in some cases reverse. So at first, when things were getting better for most of the 20th century, we were like, yeah, better education, better nutrition, better environments means people are getting smarter. And also, we need to get smarter because the demands of the world are increasing. But something weird has been happening for the past 2 decades ish, where that's not really happening anymore. For the first time in human history, we are not outperforming the last generation, which is quite concerning. But it coincides with the rise of media, technology, and all of the things we find ourselves heavily dependent on. I almost want to use the word addicted, but I know that people don't like that word. So, heavily dependent on. Now, IQ test scores aren't the end all be all of intelligence, but it is a noteworthy shift because we're not outperforming our parents in raw cognitive horsepower, which is strange given that for most of human history, that was the trend. So, what I'm trying to say here is that yes, COVID expedited this whole getting dumber thing, but it wasn't really the main cause of it. We are all being rewired in ways we cannot begin to understand. Distraction, decision fatigue, mental exhaustion, overstimulation, shallow thinking, etc., etc. We're all being rewired, and that is not accidental, that is by design. Dr. Gloria Mark, author of Attention Span, notes that the average time a person can actually focus on one task has dropped from 2.5 minutes in 2004 to 47 seconds in 2023. Now, that's the amount of time we can focus on a single task, not necessarily our attention span. Our attention span now, on average, is actually about 8 seconds. which is like a little bit more than a goldfish, I think. Not even joking. I'll put it right here. Do you see it? Hopefully you see it. And if you really think about it, 2004 to 2023, what big shifts happened in society? Well, I mean, many, but the rise of technology, the rise of smartphones and social media, that maps perfectly onto the timeline that we're talking about. And this is really not just about smartphones, it's just about information in general, how we use it or don't use it. I have a fun fact. I didn't steal it. I borrowed it from a fellow content creator who talked about this topic as well. And it's a really interesting thing. Eric Schmidt, former Google CEO, said that every 2 days, we produce as much information as we did from 2003 all the way dating back to the dawn of civilization. I should have reversed that. From the dawn of civilization to 2003. Every 2 days. So, and you're thinking, really? Yes. Every TikTok, every thirst trap, every comment, every like, that is a new piece of information or data. And we produce so much of it every single second of every single day. So it's no surprise that we're feeling this overwhelm or burnout from all the information around us. But this leads me into what I'm going to be talking about next, which is the paradox of plenty. See, when there is so much information, nothing means anything anymore. When every piece of information is equally available, no piece of information is given priority or value. When we have too much of a good thing, it becomes a bad thing, and this is true for every part of life. It's like trying to hydrate with a fire hose. You're getting water, but you're also getting knocked unconscious. You see, this infinite amount of information is turning our brain into mush, because with the paradox of plenty, you have so much there, and then you're rendered incapable of using any of it. And plus, I mean, we are bombarded with useless information, trivial information every single day. I try to open my phone, and honestly, see, here's the thing. We've confused scrolling with learning, exposure with mastery, just knowing things with wisdom. We've confused it all. I open my phone and scroll through Instagram thinking I'm giving my brain either a break, which doesn't really work because I end up more overstimulated and burnt out than when I open the phone. Or I open it thinking I'm going to learn about the news or what's happening in the world, and I just get information about celebrity relationships and very random AI cat videos with cat relationships. I know you know what I'm talking about. We are living through one of the most significant neurological shifts of human history. Hello, Luna. And we're doing it all for the sake of ad revenue. So let's talk about the war on our attention. Johann Hari in his book Stolen Focus, by the way, Johann Hari, one of my favorite authors, great guy. I don't actually know him, but I'm assuming he's a great guy because his books are amazing. Lost Connections is also an incredible read. I recommend it for everybody living through this day and age because we have a crisis of loneliness. And I think that's one of the crises in the world that I care most about, the loneliness epidemic. And not just, being alone, but feeling alone, because you can feel alone in a room full of people that you love, even. Anyways, that's besides the point. He calls this the crisis of attention. And he's not just talking about our attention as in, can we focus on one task without switching tabs or multitasking 8 other things, but the ability to think deeply enough or slowly enough to formulate an original thought. Do you ever remember a time in your life where you were able to sit with a thought and play with it? Like, just have it dance around in your brain, transform into different thoughts, lead into different ideas. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to sit and allow your thoughts to move and dance and shapeshift and really understand where it's taking you, why it's taking you there, and what you can come up with. That is what Johann Hari is arguing that we've lost as a society. And I completely agree with him, even for myself. I was much more capable of doing these kinds of things when I was 19 than I am now, even though now I have so much more knowledge and information, except I'm not able to use it or think about it as I was able to in the past. So, is it really that useful? I don't really know. And the scariest part of this is that this attention, this ability to think is being engineered away from us. It's being stolen from us because forget gold or crypto or oil, your attention is the most valuable currency in the 21st century. And we live in something called the attention economy. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X are all stealing your attention because, well, that's what makes them the most amount of money. Attention has become a commodity that is auctioned off to the highest bidder. Your attention, your cognitive abilities, that is what they want. The more distracted you are, the more predictable that you are, and the more you can sit in front of a screen and watch ads and make more money for that app. But as soon as you regain that ability to focus and give your attention to one single thing, they start to lose money. So it's actually a threat. That is why they hire psychologists, neuroscientists, and sociologists, all of the specialties. These platforms hire them not to think of how they can make things better for you, but to hack the most primal parts of yourself. It's a very insidious and malicious economic and business model, but it's quite simple and it's working pretty darn well because the more they erode and wear down your ability to resist, the more money you're going to put in their pockets. Tristan Harris, former Google ethicist and co founder of the Center for Humane Technology, said that we're at the race to the bottom of the brainstem. What wins? The most impulsive, primal parts of us. Not logic, not reason, not long term thinking, just the click. The infinite scroll wasn't designed to make your life easier, not at all. It is designed to kind of mimic gambling in the brain. It's that variable reward, the anticipation of something, the variable notifications even on your phone. There's like um, this crazy article that I read that when your phone notices that you're not on your phone, they don't really alert you to a notification when it happens. They just alert you with random notifications throughout the day, sporadically and at random, to make sure that you are constantly thinking about it and constantly checking your phone. And I mean, they've created notifications for everything. Hey, your friend posted a story. Hey, someone you don't really know is starting a live. Hey, why don't you add this person? Why are these notifications? Don't know, but they are. It's all designed to bypass your prefrontal cortex, which is the region of the brain that is responsible for your critical thinking, your higher order thinking, long term decision making. And so when you bypass this enough times, you lose the muscle memory of engaging it. It's kind of like smoking a cigarette or, breaking the habit of smoking. Half of it is the actual addiction, the physiological addiction to the substance, but a really big portion of it is just the habitual aspect of it. Just not thinking you are pulling something to your mouth and inhaling. I mean, this is a big problem with vaping. And I think it's actually one of the most intense addictions, which is like that behavioral aspect of it, almost like a pacifier, because you are bypassing your prefrontal cortex. You're not really engaging any decision making in your action. It's just happening as a habit. It's happening to you, not from you, not you doing it. It's just happening to you. And that's pretty terrifying if you think about it. You might think, hey, it's not that bad. I can have my phone next to me, hop on a text, come back, finish my work, even have my phone with me while I'm watching a movie. We all think we can multitask, and we feel really proud of it. We're like, man, I'm able to do so much all at once. But Dr. Clifford Nass, professor at Stanford University, warned heavy multitaskers because he said that these kinds of people actually perform far, far worse on cognitive tasks like managing working memory or being able to filter out irrelevant information, being able to hold on to relevant information for the next task. All of these things degrade as you continuously multitask. And that's really because we're not really multitasking. We don't really truly do two things at once. That's not really possible. What's happening is that we're very quickly shifting between task to task. And yes, looking at your phone is considered a task because your brain is processing that information. But every time you switch between task and task, that's not just like a clean cut switch. There's something called, um, is it cognitive tax? Attention tax, some kind of tax that we pay. Basically, we lose a little bit of that attentiveness because when we're constantly switching on and off, our brain holds on to what we just did for a very long period of time. It's not like check that notification, put it down, it's gone. It's check that notification, now it's in my head for the next X amount of time while I continuously do other tasks. And so, really, what you're doing is opening so many different tabs, running on 2% battery, overstimulated, feeling like you're actually doing something productive, but leaving yourself so burnt out and incapable of actually giving anything your all, whether it be in attention or focus or energy. Okay, I don't know why I feel the need to apologize for this, but if you see the redness, the lupus happening, please excuse that. It's very hot in Qatar, and even with ACs blasting, which I am like so privileged to have in my home, it is still very, very hot. So if you see me just getting really red and my ears getting really red, just know that I feel it and I know it's there. So let's get on with the episode, okay? I don't know why I'm getting defensive. Everybody just calm down. Let's get on. Cognitive neuroscientists who studied digital media use found that overstimulation from the constant pings and notifications and the sounds and the lights really does alter your brain's reward pathways, which comes as no surprise. I talk about this extensively in this episode right over here. Um, but basically, the more you use it, the less capable you are of feeling that initial reward, the dopamine, really. And so every notification, every ping, that's flooding our system with dopamine, and we build a tolerance to it. And so eventually we're going to need louder, faster, weirder, stranger content to feel something because our baseline has decreased. It was once here, and we're going up every time we engage with something, and now it's here, and it's so hard to get us back up. But we're constantly striving towards that. We're never going to stop because us humans are greedy when it comes to pleasure. We just want more and more and more. And that's really like biologically hardwired into us. It's not really our fault, but for the right things. I mean, for example, when you found sugary foods in nature back in the day when we were cavemen, your brain was like, oh my God, flood the dopamine. We have to find that again because we lived in an age of scarcity. Now we live in an age of abundance. And trust me, we can't even keep up with the sources of pleasure that exist now in the world. Pleasure in every capacity. But it's leaving us more and more depressed and dulled, which again is more related to the episode of why we feel like shit all the time, because Dr. Anna Lemke in Dopamine Nation explains this beautifully and explains how it is really the same as any kind of addiction, same reward pathways, same circuits, same long term side effects on mood, cognition, emotion regulation, and really just our habits. And the thing about neural plasticity, which is our brain's ability to form new neural pathways, change, grow over time, or atrophy over time, is that it's a double edged sword. It doesn't really care what you're training it for, it will just be trained in accordance with your habits. And so think of this as like a dirt road in the middle of a forest. It's flat, you know? And then you keep driving over the same path again and again and again, and you've ingrained a pathway there. It doesn't matter where it's leading to, it doesn't matter why you're doing it, but it is being ingrained. And that is exactly how neuroplasticity works for us. Our habits are pretty much shaping our brains and who we are. And if our habits are flicking and swiping and clicking and everything is so fast, then that's what our brain is going to get used to. And it is very difficult to come out of that. So, in a world where we're so used to just swiping to the next thing every 5 to 7 seconds or so, maybe even faster, when we come to sit down and like read a book, it feels like we're trying to bench press a car. It's so difficult. I have struggled so much recently with sitting down and engaging in long form content, whether it be a film or a book or an audiobook. I feel like if I'm not doing a million things at once, I literally can't hear it or focus. I'll read a sentence and reread it and reread it and reread it and not understand what's happening, even if it's a book I've read before, which is absolutely crazy. But that's basically what's happening. Our reward pathways, our neural pathways, all of it, they are taking advantage. Who's they? I love putting that in there because I mean, what's life without a little bit of conspiracy theory, right? And I know what you're thinking. I'll just start tomorrow. It's fine. I can just detox from it and return back to normal. Wrong. Because this is actually structural too. Studies using fMRI machines looking at the brains of people who engage in excessive screen time and don't found that people who do engage in excessive screen time, especially children, because developing brains and all, different reward pathways, etc., actually have measurable thinning of their prefrontal cortex and shrinkage in the hippocampus, which is also what COVID did. But basically, this is structural, and that's really hard to come back from if you're actually shrinking your brain and thinning your prefrontal cortex and reducing gray matter. That's like a whole other thing, which we'll get into in a second. But it's not always reversible. So don't just think tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. Like now, we have to start now. I'm telling myself to, because I am having a really hard time with social media addiction. And I really never, not to be like, sound like I to put myself above people, but I really genuinely thought that it wouldn't be me. Like I wouldn't be the type of person to spend 3, 4 hours on my phone scrolling through meaningless stuff. But here I am, and it's hard, and I feel like I'm in a trance, and I feel like my brain is being rewired, and that my brain is shrinking because it probably is. So, if you want to learn more about like the actual structural changes in the brain, I have an episode where I do a really deep dive into every single structure, and that's right here. I'll put it right here. It's more in relation to adolescence and developing brains, but I think it's very useful for all of us to understand because all of us are living through the same kind of digital integration that adolescents are. I mean, even our parents are having to spend more and more time online because they pull you in with like, you have to, because everything is online now and you have no choice. But then the more you use it, the more you have to use it and the more you want to use it, and the less capable you are of stopping using it. Fight the system. My point is, your brain wasn't built for this world. Don't feel like you're weak. I shouldn't feel like I'm weak because really our brains evolved in information scarcity. Attention was the difference between surviving and not surviving the day. That rustle in the bushes, you better pay attention because that could be food or something that wants you as food. Attention is a very precious thing. It really is what makes us so human. Not to be like one of those people who are like, humans are the best species, because I know a lot of people are like, no, I'm having conversations with myself right now. But we evolved in a very different kind of world. And now that we're here and our brains haven't had time to evolve to do this, it feels like we're operating in a world where we have eh, software that's like decades old or centuries old. And it really is the case. So if you feel like you're running on like iOS 1 or 2 when we're all the way up to like 60, you're not alone. You're not crazy. It's really happening culturally, biologically, all of the ologies as always. So let's zoom out a little. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us existentially? Philosopher Byung-Chul Chan, who I talk about a lot also, argues that have become a society of fatigue. Basically, we are exhausting ourselves in this pursuit for self-optimization and more and more. In the digital age, we are left incapable of being alone with our thoughts. Rest doesn't feel restful, play doesn't feel playful, work doesn't feel productive, and our days simply just pass us by, and we are so, so burnt out and exhausted, even if we don't know it. And there are subtle signs of this. It doesn't necessarily have to be just like, oh, I have to lay in my bed and doom scroll all day because I'm exhausted. Burnout can come in many forms, like not enjoying the things you once enjoyed before, not having the same amount of energy, having health consequences because of chronic cortisol elevation, not really knowing you have chronic cortisol elevation because you've been living like that for most of your life. We're seeing rises in autoimmune disorders and mental health issues, depression, anxiety, all kinds of mental health disorders too. Um, and I forgot to mention this earlier, but it's not just the phones, really. It's like the environment around us as well, like the air quality, the air pollution, the light pollution, the food we're eating, which deregulates our blood sugar levels, which impacts our focus, our disrupted sleep and circadian rhythms, which doesn't allow us to pay attention the way we once did. All of it taken together, this conversation is so long, so extensive, so incredibly important because not being able to be alone with your thoughts or form an original thought means that you're losing who you are. Not being able to get off that phones means that I'm not talking anymore. Not being able to get off your phone means that you're losing your agency and your liberty and your choice. We like to think of ourselves as autonomous thinkers, but we really are not anymore. I mean, how can we be when we can't focus on anything for longer than 30 seconds? When we lose our ability to choose what we pay attention to, we lose who we are, we lose our agency. And attention is a form of agency, it's a form of liberty. and it's being stolen from us and engineered away from us. And this is why this conversation matters so much. But alas, this conversation is too long to have in one sitting. I don't want to fragment and fracture your attention just as well as everything else in the world. So, in the name of keeping things short enough for you to digest it, we're ending it here. Stay tuned for part two, where we're going to talk more about memory offloading, and more sciencey stuff, and talk about ways in which we can address this and take our focus and attention back. So definitely watch that video to get the full idea of what's happening. I'm so happy I got to talk to you about this. I hope it was informative. I can't wait to see you next time here on this channel. Stay happy, stay healthy. Until then.